Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're stepping into the heart of one of the most extraordinary engineering achievements of our time. It's bigger than most skyscrapers, more complex than a space rocket, and more powerful than almost anything that sails the seas. This is America's $13 billion aircraft carrier, a true floating city of war. It is not just a ship. It is a nation's power, influence, and defense strategy condensed into one massive, unstoppable machine. The first thing that strikes you about an aircraft carrier is its sheer size. At over 1,000 feet long, the deck alone covers more than 4 acres, large enough to house nearly 80 aircraft. Imagine standing on one end of this giant runway at sea, looking across to the other side as fighter jets roar into the sky. The sight is overwhelming, but the scale is only the beginning. Because when you step inside, you realize you are entering a city built for war, but designed to function like a community. Life aboard involves more than 50 men and women. That's the population of a small town, all living, working, and training together in the middle of the ocean. Every single person has a role: pilots, mechanics, engineers, chefs, medics, navigators, and sailors working tirelessly to keep the ship alive. Imagine coordinating the daily meals for thousands of people at once. Massive kitchens below deck operate around the clock, baking bread, cooking meat, and preparing enough food to feed an entire army. In fact, on some carriers, the crew consumes more than 18 meals per day. And every ingredient, every supply, has to be carefully planned weeks in advance because once the ship sails, it must sustain itself far away from land. It's not just food either. There are barber shops, gyms, chapels, and even small convenience stores where sailors can pick up snacks or essentials. There's a full medical team on board, capable of handling everything from daily checkups to emergency surgeries. In other words, this ship is designed to be self-sufficient. If the carrier is deployed halfway around the world, it has everything needed to function without outside support for months. That's why it's called a floating city. But let's talk about what gives this city its heart: the nuclear reactors. Most ships rely on diesel or fuel, but not this one. Deep within its hull are 2 massive nuclear reactors that can power the carrier for over 20 years without ever needing to refuel. 20 years. That means the carrier can sail around the world again and again, reaching any hotspot on the planet without worrying about running out of energy. Those reactors generate not just propulsion, but enough electricity to run every system on board: lights, computers, kitchens, radars, weapons, and climate control. Think of it as a floating power plant, generating the same amount of energy as a medium-sized city on land. Now, the main mission of an aircraft carrier is to project air power anywhere on Earth. The flight deck is essentially a floating airport, but far more intense than any civilian runway. Dozens of fighter jets are prepared below deck, lifted to the surface using giant aircraft elevators. Once on the deck, each jet is readied in minutes. Using electromagnetic catapult systems, the jet is launched down the runway and hurled into the sky at breathtaking speed. The launch alone is an engineering masterpiece. A jet goes from 0 to 150 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. When these jets return, they face an even greater challenge: landing. They must hook onto steel cables stretched across the deck, coming to a full stop in less than 400 feet. Every launch and landing is dangerous, noisy, and requires absolute precision. Yet on a carrier, these happen dozens of times a day. The aircraft on board range from stealth fighters like the F-35 to early warning aircraft with giant radar domes, helicopters for transport and rescue missions, and even drones that extend the carrier's reach. With this arsenal, the ship can launch attacks, defend allies, patrol vast oceans, or provide humanitarian relief when disaster strikes. One single carrier, with its fleet of planes, has more firepower than the air forces of many nations. But an aircraft carrier never sails alone. It is always the centerpiece of what's known as a carrier strike group. This includes destroyers armed with missiles, submarines lurking beneath the surface, and supply ships ensuring the carrier never runs short on resources. Together, they form a floating fortress. If you attack one, you face them all. This layered protection makes carriers incredibly difficult to threaten. Inside, the brains of the ship are equally impressive. The command center looks like the control room of a space mission. Walls of screens display everything happening in the air, on the sea, and under the water. Communications officers coordinate with satellites, commanders plan missions, and intelligence officers analyze data from across the globe. It is here that split-second decisions are made, decisions that can influence wars, rescue missions, or peacekeeping operations. And the carrier doesn't just bring power, it brings presence. When America sends a carrier into a region, it sends a message without firing a single shot. Allies feel reassured knowing the carrier is nearby. Enemies feel pressure, knowing that a strike force capable of launching dozens of aircraft is sitting just offshore. These ships are not just machines. They are instruments of diplomacy, projecting influence as much as they project force. Yet for all its focus on war, the carrier is also a vessel of peace when needed. In times of disaster, like tsunamis, hurricanes, or earthquakes, these ships have been used to deliver aid. They can desalinate thousands of gallons of seawater each day, turn it into drinking water, and provide food and medical help to devastated communities. Helicopters from the carrier can deliver supplies to areas cut off by disaster. In these moments, the same ship that can launch fighter jets also becomes a lifeline of hope. Of course, maintaining such a vessel is enormously expensive. Beyond the $13 billion construction cost, operating it can run into millions every single month. Fuel for aircraft, spare parts, food for thousands, training exercises, maintenance on the nuclear reactors. Everything costs money, but for the U.S., it's an investment in unmatched power. There is no other ship in the world that can do what an American carrier can do, and that dominance is worth the price. Now, think about the human side again. Every sailor on board has their own story. Many are young men and women in their 20s, experiencing the vastness of the ocean for the first time. They work long hours in noisy, high-stress environments, but they also form bonds like family. In the middle of the sea, thousands of miles from home, the carrier becomes their home. Birthdays are celebrated, friendships are made, and memories are created on this floating city that few civilians will ever see with their own eyes. At night, the flight deck is something surreal. The stars shine above, the ocean stretches endlessly into darkness, and the deck glows under powerful lights as jets continue to launch and land. The noise is deafening, the wind is intense, and the energy is electric. It feels like standing in the center of a storm created by machines and people working in perfect unison. When you look at this $13 billion aircraft carrier, you're not just looking at a ship. You're looking at the result of centuries of naval history, decades of innovation, and the combined effort of tens of thousands of engineers, sailors, and visionaries. It is a city, a fortress, an airport, a power plant, and a weapon all rolled into one. It is a piece of floating land that can change the balance of power anywhere it sails. So the next time you hear about America's aircraft carriers, remember, they are more than tools of war. They are symbols of ambition, guardians of the seas, and reminders of just how far human ingenuity can go when power and necessity demand it. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this rare look into the floating city of war, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible deep dives into technology, defense, and the hidden machines that shape our world. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.